I have had my dog for over 10 years. His name is Saz. That was his name when we rescued him from a shelter at 2 to 3 years old. He's a Kelpie Blue Heeler Australian cattle dog. He's the first and only dog I've ever had. He's such a handsome boy with a wonderful smile that everyone comments on. He has big pointy ears that stick up like those on Batman's cowl, earning him the nickname Bat Dog. Despite his ethnic background as a cattle dog, he's the world's biggest sook. He's always been energetic, wanting to play with bigger dogs well into his older age. Even after 2 back leg reconstructions, he never stopped wanting to run, even as he began to pant more and more as the years went by. A fortnight ago, he got sick suddenly. We took him to a vet and discovered he had a UTI, urinary tract infection. He's on antibiotics now that have fixed the UTI, but this prompted the question of what had caused it. A scan revealed a mass in his abdomen. The vet told us that it was possible that something had calcified in his stomach and it had become infected, and that would be an easy fix. It was not. It's cancer on his liver, and it's inoperable. It's not a matter of if we put him down, but when. As a family, we're still deciding whether to wait until the first sign of suffering to take him to the vets or to set a fixed date. I don't feel comfortable putting him down when he still seems happy, but my father is concerned that he may deteriorate extremely suddenly and he will suffer before we can get him to a vet. He's suggesting a week from now. I don't think it's all fully registered yet. I got the news less than an hour ago. I'm going to spend the remainder of the time with him giving him treats and cuddles and having my friends who've known him for years come over to see him one last time. But I'm afraid that even after all that, I won't be ready and it will all hit me as we're taking him to the vets, and I won't be able to let him go. I won't be ready to let them take him away from me. I know there's nothing that anyone can do to fix this, but I hope someone who's been through this before can give me some advice on how to cope with this. Firstly, let me say thank you to all of you who offered advice, empathy, and condolences. I'm sorry I did not respond to you, as all of my emotional and mental energy was spent holding myself together and spending time with my beautiful boy. I know that this is an extremely long post, but I just need to get everything out of my head, and there's a lot in there. It has turned from just an update for readers of my original post into an all-encompassing post for readers new and old. I was 10 or 11, and my family had decided to finally get a dog after a long time of asking. My twin brother, my dad, and I went to the pound and had a look at the dogs there. Dad wanted a dog that already had some training and was well behaved. We walked down the row of enclosures, and he approached each dog. But we finally came to him. Dad gave him a look and held up his finger, and Subs just trotted over and sat down in front of us. So friendly and playful, but gentle and careful. By the end of our visit, we had our hearts set on him. Mum took some more convincing. She was afraid he had a bit of Rottweiler in him, but after visiting him herself, she fell in love. For over 10 years we had him, and he was with me from when I was a child, still in primary school, through all my high school and university dramas. He was the best dog I could have ever asked for. Playful, polite, friendly, handsome, and adorable. As he got older, he began to slow down. That's something we expected. Then, one night a week before Christmas, he was running a fever and very uncomfortable. He wouldn't settle down and drank a lot of water. The next day, they took him to the vet. They diagnosed he had a UTI and gave him antibiotics to treat it. So the crisis was hopefully averted. But this did prompt the question of what had caused it. They did a scan and found a mass in his torso. It was concerning, but the vets told us that it could very well be nothing to worry about. The explanation they gave was that sometimes dogs eat things they shouldn't, and in order to protect itself, the body forms a calcified layer around it in their gut. But they do another scan to be sure. It wasn't a calcified mass. It was terminal liver cancer. I found out on the morning of Nye. Shortly after writing my original post, I got in my car and just completely broke down for about 30 seconds. For context, before So's cancer, I'd cried twice in the past 5 years. I don't cry. I pulled myself together and drove off to go do the things I needed to do that day. I had work that evening, and I work in a liquor store. We were flat out busy from before I got there, right up until our closing time late at night. Then I had a party I was supposed to go to at my partner's house. I didn't tell my partner or any of my friends because I didn't want to take away from their enjoyment. It wasn't an easy night and not one I would describe as fun, but I did manage to hold it together. The next morning, on Jan 1st, myself, my partner, and 2 other friends who had stayed over spent the day at the beach. It was a really nice day when I didn't think about Saz. That night, I broke the news to my partner. We were both very upset, and we cried into each other's arms. On Monday, I followed one Redditor's advice and bought Saz a Big Mac and a Quarter Pounder for myself. He sniffed the Big Mac and decided he didn't like it, and then sniffed the burger and decided he did like that. So he has my burger and I had his. That night my partner came to stay over. She has known him for a few years now and wanted to spend some time with him. On Tuesday morning, my dad informed me that Saz was booked in for his final appointment on Friday morning. I felt that this was too soon as it had cut his prognosis down from 1 to 2 weeks to 6 days and meant that now I only had 3 days left with him. Furthermore, it felt like jumping the gun because he still seemed really good. My partner and I took Saz for a walk around the lake in our local national park, and she took photos and videos of us together that I will always hold dear and look at once I'm ready. Afterwards, we went to a local cafe where I bought Saz a breakfast burger all for himself, which he ate most of. When I dropped my partner home, she turned to the back seat and cheerfully said, "Bye-bye, Saz," which struck me as unfitting. It was a finality. Maybe it hadn't hit her yet, or she was delaying the grieving some more. I spoke with my dad when I got home. I voiced how I felt regarding the date of Saz's final appointment. He understood how I felt, but explained some things to me that I didn't know or understand. The prognosis of 1 to 2 weeks simply referred to when the cancer was likely to kill him. But before then, he would lose his ability to walk, eat, drink, or even stand up. Furthermore, many of the complications of the cancer would likely kill him at around that same point, in ways that would have been deeply distressing and painful for him. Ultimately, we were in a race against time against all of the sufferings that the cancer could inflict before it killed him and all of the catastrophic complications that could kill him even sooner, even more brutally. Our local vet, who had been caring for him for years and had been with us through this diagnosis, would not be open on weekends. If we didn't go on Friday and something were to happen over the weekend, we would either have to hold out until Monday, prolonging his suffering, or take him to a 24/7 vet that he was unfamiliar with, who likely would not be able to give him the passing that was best for him. This would also apply if something didn't happen over the weekend, but happened late at night or in the early hours of the morning. By that point, not only would his passing be more upsetting, but we would have been unable to save him from immense suffering. So while it was hard, I accepted that sooner was better to avoid a catastrophe. He hugged me and I just completely broke down again. He started crying too, which was really hard to watch because I can count only 3 times in my life I have seen my father cry. My partner texted me asking if she could come over again to spend more time with him. So that night she stayed over again. He cuddled between us on the couch while we watched a sitcom. We considered pushing back his date to Monday, as he seemed really well. It was her belief that Friday was still the right time, and I found myself unable to disagree with her. Early Friday morning, we went on one last car ride to the vet's together. We put the center armrest down in the back seat, so he could lie on the floor of the boot and stick his head through into the back seat like he did. At 9:17 a.m., we arrived at our local vet clinic, who had been seeing Saz for years and were with us through every step of the way, from diagnosing and treating his initial infection to finding the cancer that has caused it. She took him out of the room to put an IV into his front paw and give him some sedatives to calm him. When he came back, he wanted to sniff all around the room, even behind the chairs my brother and I were sitting on, up against the wall. I don't think the sedatives slowed him down much, as it took a while to get him to lie down on the blanket. At 9:30 a.m. on Friday, the 6th of January, Sos closed his eyes and went to sleep for the last time surrounded by all of us. He was lying there and just slowly lowered his head down onto his paws and closed his eyes. I watched his chest stop rising and falling, and after a moment, the vet put a stethoscope against his side. After a moment, she pulled it away and gave us a nod. And he was gone. The vet left us alone to say goodbye. Mum began to panic and needed to leave the room. And that was the last time I ever saw him on this earth. The silence and emptiness of that house was agonizing. I knew he was gone. And yet somehow I could not stop my body from walking around the house, checking every spot where he would usually be and finding it empty. I knew before I turned every corner and poked my head into every room that he wouldn't be there. And yet I was powerless not in any way. I picked up one of his blankets he had left in my room that Dad had missed. I put my nose to it and smelled it and just burst into tears. I held my hands to my head and wailed, staggering from one doorway to the other, leaning against each one for support as the sounds of my agony reverberated through that wrongly empty house. I didn't want to be with anybody, but I couldn't be alone. I didn't want to go anywhere, but I couldn't stay here. I didn't want to do anything, but I couldn't sit still and do nothing because then all I would do is think about it all. I spent the day with my partner. We just sat on her couch for a while. I was completely tuned out of reality. My brain swings wildly between TV static and a constant, unending, all-consuming stream of thoughts of Sos. I couldn't stay sitting there, so we decided to go out and do something, anything, to distract me from everything. So I sat staring at my phone, mindlessly scrolling across my city on Google Maps, waiting for something to jump out at me. But nothing did. Eventually, I said fuck it and decided to just go to the mall in the city and look at all the shops, and I'd buy everything that I saw that I liked. And I was immediately hit by the voice in my head that said, but nothing you buy can ever fill that hole he's left behind. Thanks, brain. This morning, someone dropped something while walking, and it sounded like the clatter-clatter of his paws. Every time I hear someone sigh, it sounds like him. Dad barely held back tears this morning when he made honey toast and realized that Sos wasn't going to be there to have any. I'd hear Mum crying to herself a lot. It's going to be so hard and scary living without him. 5 days and 22 hours. That's all the time I had between being told he had terminal cancer and holding him in my arms for the last time after he had slipped away. 2 days and 23 hours. That's all the time I had between being told when his appointment was and the last time I would ever see him on Earth as I looked back at him one last time as I left the room after he passed. It's been 25 hours and 15 minutes since I quietly sang a lullaby to him and kissed his head for the last time. It wasn't enough time for me to be ready or say goodbye. But deep down, I know that no amount of time would have been. I have no regrets about how it ended, but I'm completely destroyed that it finally has, and I don't know how I'm supposed to go on afterwards. I'd give everything and anything to go back and have him with me. Goodbye, Sos.